Should graphic footage of Azerbaijani forces committing war crimes be allowed on platforms like Facebook? Is the Armenian government using spyware software? And is AI coming for us all? I'm joined to discuss this by media consultant Artur Papian. So it's a real pleasure. Thank you, Artur Papian, for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start off by talking about Meta's Oversight Board's recent report, which brought up a specific example of Azerbaijani soldiers torturing this Armenian soldier. For those who don't know, Meta is a conglomerate that owns Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and its Oversight Board released this report. So I found some things interesting and I want to get your reaction to it. It said in the report that basically they left it on the platform because of its newsworthiness. And they said that the public interest in seeing the content outweighed the risk to the safety and dignity of the prisoners of war. So firstly, I want to ask, what do you think about this dichotomy of newsworthiness on the one hand, and at the other hand, the dignity of the people that appear in the video? What did you think when you saw this Oversight Board report?
I mean, the important thing is also to consider who is talking about this, because Facebook, Meta, has always been talking about the fact that they're just a medium and that they are not a media. So they've been trying to get rid of this responsibility all along, to not moderate stuff, to put it upon others, to fact check, decide, etc. And yet, in this very striking case, they have taken up the charge of deciding whether this is newsworthy or not. And in this regard, it's like really, really tricky. This case can become a precedent for many, many other decisions by Meta. And this can be one more step for turning Meta into a media outlet, actually. Because if they design the algorithm which filters what is newsworthy and what is not, if they also make judgmental decisions of what should appear and what shouldn't, they're essentially becoming a media, because that's one of the prime factors of news media outlet, to filter the irrelevant stuff and provide or show what is actually newsworthy. So this is one of the main things. The other part is, yes, the controversy, whether this is newsworthy or whether this is offensive. We have to understand that the user who has posted the content has actually written some sort of special calls like Stop Azerbaijani Aggression. So it's trying to be pro-Armenian in its stance, and then it is showing how Armenian soldier is humiliated. And the controversy is real, because you should not display people in situations where they're diminished, where their dignity is downplayed, when they face these type of situations. And in my honest opinion, this video shouldn't be on Meta's platform, because one thing that we couldn't see in the judgment or the decision that Meta has published, the Oversight Board is published, yet they haven't considered the fact that actually publishing those videos on various platforms is part of Azerbaijan's hybrid information and influence campaign. So they're actually, in a way, they seem to be encouraging their Yashma, their special forces, to go there, take videos, post it on various channels, even though on official channels they say that they shouldn't do that. Yet they keep doing this. They keep making videos in very much ISIS style, which my interpretation is this is clearly an information campaign and part of their hybrid war against the Armenian society. And even if some Armenian user hasn't considered those aspects and has tried to present it as a pro-Armenian message, this still shouldn't be allowed there. Human rights defenders, lawyers should grab the video, save it, use it in criminal proceedings. International human rights organizations should take notes, keep it as documentation evidence. But Meta, a social media company, and even any media company, real media company, which considers factors like human dignity, do no harm, these type of aspects, definitely should remove this video and should not let any society get exposed to this type of info war and unhuman treatment of prisoners of war.
Understandably, for Armenians, these videos are like deeply triggering. during the 2020 war, the 2022 September attack by Azerbaijan, people's feeds were flooded with very graphic footage, which included even like beheadings of civilians that people were watching on their social media. But I'm interested by what you said about responsibility, in that they don't want to take responsibility, in the sense that even in the Oversight Board's report, they write that they're looking for public comment, we want people's feedback, etc. We saw, Senate hearings with various people coming from the social media giants and, being hammered about this issue of responsibility. Isn't it easier for them to just not allow any of this content on their platforms? Why don't they want to take responsibility?
If they do take responsibility for these and similar cases, that means that they will have to hire an army of moderators, editors, journalists to look at every other piece of content. The reason Facebook, Google, every other high-tech company which is trying to be a medium is and not turn into a media is because when they become media, then they have to answer for every piece of user-generated content, which is frankly impossible. In case of Meta, as far as I remember, like right now they have more than 2 billion people or over 2 billion people in the platform. And to moderate 2 billion people, you probably need another 2 billion, which is like an impossible task. So Facebook is trying to fight this. The Oversight Board was actually a forced decision as far as I understood, because they were facing constant criticism, calls to US Congress to testify, and just to get rid of that, they created this global body which will be looking at select cases. It has respectable people, like I think former Danish Prime Minister is one of the people who's on board, some journalism professors, some well-recognized people are members. A recent addition to the Oversight Board was in literally this February 14th, as far as I remember. So this 20-member body will just pick very select cases, look at them and make judgments. And those judgments would be sort of a guideline for other moderators to do it. Facebook usually outsources the moderation tasks, or it has partial automated moderation, then some outsourced regional moderating groups, and then the moderators in Meta itself. And this will be even if they moderate something, and if somebody complains and says you should look at it, they will say it's not us responsible, it's this oversight body complaining to them. So it's a way to trick it back, and at the same time it's an easy way, they don't have to look at everything but just some select cases. This pretty much is a money issue. If Facebook could afford to moderate everything and everyone, I guess they would. But technically this is impossible. Financially this is not viable. So I guess that's the line they're going to continue pushing for.
Okay, and I also want to talk about this issue which has been spoken about amongst Armenians this year especially, is spyware software, things like Pegasus, Predator, etc. Before we get into it, can you explain briefly in layman's terms what exactly is a spyware software to those who may not understand?
So basically, spyware has originated because communication has become more and more secure. So while in the past it was pretty easy technically to wiretrap a regular phone conversation or grab an SMS message, now that many people are trying to talk with encrypted messengers like Signal or end-to-end encrypted software like WhatsApp or secure mode in Telegram or Facebook, what is happening is many governments are unable to actually access data and intercept data and find and hack criminals and disrupt operations. So at some point there was this demand from governments to somehow get into the middle and try to break into the encryption and see what's happening. And as a solution, some software vendors developed software which could be on the end devices of the users, because in order for the user to see the message or listen to the call on an encrypted channel, it has to be decrypted on the end device, on the phone or on the computer. So it was seen as one of the few viable ways to defeat encryption, because breaking encryption at this stage of technology development in some cases is technically impossible. So they would instead put a bug, let's say, in your phone, which would listen in, which could grab screenshots, take keystrokes, and help governments fight terrorists and criminals, basically. The problem is not all governments use the software as intended. They become clients of spyware companies, which would be sort of providing services to fight criminals and terrorists. And then they would be using it against dissidents, journalists, opposition actually. And we have seen several high-level cases in Armenia when both government and opposition politicians have been hacked. We've seen also cases when journalists have been hacked with spyware, and also some human rights defenders. I am a member of a team called CyberHub, which is researching some of this malware, and we're working with international organizations like Citizen Lab and Amnesty Tech to investigate, to collect some evidence. And because this research is underway, I wouldn't really like to talk more about this, because we are verifying evidence, collecting data, and in its due course, this will be published as part of an investigation when we're absolutely sure that we can say something and it's not just a claim.
Okay, but I do want to ask, if someone has been hacked, how do they know that they've been hacked? What material evidence is there?
Basically, if there is some software installed on your phone, if you install Facebook and on a Facebook app and uninstall it, which is something I encourage many people to do, just by way of saying that, just not to waste your time. Anyway, the app will leave traces on your phone as a result of it being installed and uninstalled. Usually the phones, which are basically computers in your hands. We call them phones, but those are not phones anymore. Those are very strong computers, much more powerful than many that I had in the 90s. Basically, the computer operating system, Android or iOS, will keep a lot of logs, like what software was installed, what sites did it communicate with, what IPs did it connect to, what activities was it taking on your phone. And so those traces are possible to extract and look at using some special software. Amnesty Tech for example, has developed and open sourced a special software called Mobile Verification Toolkit. It's available on GitHub, and basically any technically inclined person can download that and try to test their phones with that software. Our CyberHub basically goes to people who suspect that they've been hacked or who have received notifications from Apple. We test their devices, we share with the owners of the phones the results, and because this is very sensitive information, we try to make sure that this information stays with us and the victims only, and we don't publicize this until we have the explicit consent of the victims and until we're absolutely sure that we can attribute the attack correctly.
Okay, and obviously targeting journalists or dissidents is problematic, but is it possible, for example, for spyware softwares to be used to target people in another country for intelligence gathering, etc., or is it only done nationally? How does it work exactly in that?
At some point there was a myth circulating that the way this software is sold, for example, if a government, say Saudi Arabia, buys software from NSO Group, it is given access to a special operator terminal, which screenshots of that have been published on the web, literally last year. And then they are able to use special hacking programs developed by NSO Group to hack, let's say, terrorists and criminals in their country. So the contract is something like that. However, we have seen cases which have been voiced publicly when governments have hacked somebody in other country, and governments have hacked not terrorists, literally not. For example, at some point, France's government made some statements about Moroccans hacking President Macron, Emmanuel Macron, and some high-level officials in France's government. We've seen also similar other cases, and in case of Armenia, for example, we're seeing that like really high-level Armenian politicians, including Alen Simonyan, who spoke about this publicly in response to a publication by my colleague Samvel Martirosyan, that his phone has been hacked or he has received notifications about Apple, which in case of Armenia usually means that that's Pegasus. Mm-hmm. Now, it's important to understand that in Armenia, there have been traces of Predator infrastructure as well as Kangaroo. Those are other spyware programs, and Google and Citizen Lab, as far as I understand, have written about this infrastructure. And if such infrastructure has been present in a country, that usually means that software, that spyware has also been used to attack somebody in Armenia. So we have seen public cases when, for example, Artur Vanetyan, former chief of Armenia's National Security Service, and then later an opposition politician, has claimed that his phone has been infected with Pegasus. We have seen David Sanasaryan saying the same. Some other people have spoken about Pegasus cases publicly. But yet we also have this evidence or publications by Google and others that there's been infrastructure for Kangaroo and Predator, which means that those types of spyware have also probably been put to use in Armenia, and we don't know yet, we don't know yet definitively, and we don't want to publicize what we know yet until we're absolutely sure of which government is actually using those various plans of spyware in Armenia.
An investigative outlet, HED, even published an article about the ruling party gathering personal information. It was quite a scandalous piece, which is available in English on HED's website, but I won't grill you anymore about this topic. Just to end off, I'm going to ask a more lighthearted question. This year, we're hearing a lot of people talk about artificial intelligence and these chatbots that are even, coming out with quite frightening statements. Even GPT-4 wrote only a few days ago that the world shall never be the same and the end is nigh, etc. Is this something to be concerned about, or is this something to just chuckle about?
I mean, let's consider one fact, that there are two of world's very large AI companies are actually based in terms of engineering in Armenia. Mm-hmm. So CRISP and PixArt are two very large technology companies based in Armenia, and CRISP has this AI which removes noise and is, as far as I know now, able to also remove the background of your conversations. And then PixArt is doing user-generated, or it's basically generative AI. It's creating stuff for users, and I use AI now basically every day. That has become, for me, GPT-4 basically has been a very fancy spell checker, let's say. I mean, it really helps you put things in perspective, spell check, grammar check, these type of stuff, speed up your process, but you always understand you still need human to take charge. No, I'm not afraid of technology. If I was, I wouldn't be sitting here, I guess. Technology has been such a great benefit to the human society. We understand that probably generative AI will render some jobs useless, but then we don't do like cuneiform, script anymore. We write regular script. We don't even write regular script anymore. We type it, and now we don't type it. We just tell the AI to generate some text for us. So I don't see a problem with this progress. This is just something that should be taken by the way of the things are now.
Even our editor-in-chief, Garin Harutyunyan, published an article where it was about the Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict, but the answers were from the chatbot, and it was quite comprehensive.
Quite
actually.
Good, yes, yeah. I would say.
Okay, well, Artur Papian, thank you again very much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.